few months ago, I went on a ride and found myself riding alongside a very friendly Chinese chap who, as it turns out, has a bike brand based in Bristol. That bike brand is Arrox. The hottest competition right now is in direct sales, so we've got companies like Canyon and Rose falling over themselves trying to outdo each other on bargain price. Arrox is joining in that fight and they've come up with the R series. This is the R1, their first ever bike. This is the top spec version of the R1 with Dura-Ace and it costs £2,659. You can get the R series from £1,599 with Shimano 105 and the exact same finishing kit, same wheels and the same frame set. According to Aerox, the R1 has 8 unique genes, and I have a list of all 8, which I'll take you through. You ready? So, starting at the front end of the bike, we have got a shoulder blade on the fork for stiffness and for aero, a stream diffuser, which is the shape underneath the down tube, which is also smooth airflow aerodynamics, an aero spine, which is this bit along the top of the top tube, which is supposed to act as an airflow separator. Again, all about the aerodynamics. They are aerospace engineers, so this probably shouldn't come as a great surprise. That's supposed to maintain laminar flow going along the top tube. Mysteriously, Arrox refers to the top tube of this bike as the top fin. It's got a cross-section that's designed for maximum stiffness. Obviously, everything about this bike will be designed for maximum stiffness because engineering. We're now up to number 5, what they call the tendon of the bike, which is in fact webbing within the frame's tubes which give it its strength. If you've ever been lucky enough to see the inside of an aircraft's wing and you've seen the webbing that goes between the spars, it's a similar concept. Point 6 on the list of unique genes is the tail of the R1, or what I like to call the coccyx because of the way it sticks out the back and looks strangely vestigial. It's basically there to prevent there being a stress riser caused by the clamp, because without that there'd be a huge amount of force just on that one point there. So basically it spreads the load a bit and stops your frame cracking. Point number 7. The soleus, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I believe that is actually the Latin word for one of your calf muscles. So logically enough, that refers to the chainstays, which are obviously very important. That's where Arrox has put its premium carbon fibres and a special cross-section, which is optimised for maximum power transfer. Point number 8, which is probably not going to seem that exciting after everything that's come before, is a clamp falling guard, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's essentially a bit inside the frame that stops the seat clamp falling down and getting stuck at your bottom bracket. Are you tired? I'm a little bit tired, but the list can go away now. There's no question that Arrox has put a huge amount of theoretical work into this bike. If you go to their website, it is chock full of graphs and stuff about optimization and pretty pictures with like computational fluid dynamic graphics and stuff. Very cool. But does it translate in the real world? That's the really important thing. The answer is yes and no. I do have some fairly major reservations about the way this bike's been spec'd, which I'll go through. For starters, this handlebar, which is designed entirely to Arrox's own spec. When I first rode this bike, I was conscious that my wrists were hurting, and that was because Arrox had chosen to mount the brake hoods too low down on this bar. So, of course, I've moved them upwards. The problem is now is that there's quite a significant dip here. And I suspect most of you probably prefer to have a fairly flat ramp into your brake hood, but here, not so much. Also, I do find this bar quite stiff, and personally I prefer something both more forgiving and also more practical from an adjustment point of view. The wheels are Arrox's own carbon rims built on pretty standard Novitec hubs, and here again I have some reservations. Now, Arrox tell me that they've done something to the carbon that's supposed to improve impact resistance, which is all well and good, but my issue with these wheels is that they're quite an old school section. They're reasonably narrow, They're sort of slab-sided. They're not fully V-section, but they're not exactly blunt. And they catch quite a lot of a side wind, and they don't brake very well, and they're just quite a firm ride that just doesn't flatter the bike at all. You might also notice that I've got some pretty heavy-duty tape on these valves, and that's because when I first got the bike, they were rattling like crazy over every bump, which is incredibly annoying. Now, Aerox says they're going to fix that, so that's not a big deal, but again, it's a little detail that just niggles. I think Aerox has made a slightly odd choice with the tyres as well. These are 23mm wide, which, to be honest, none of us really want to ride anymore, because in virtually every respect that I can think of, a 25 is just a better all-round choice. I did ask Aerox about this, and they insist that a 23 is a better choice for all-round performance and aerodynamics, but personally, on UK roads, I would definitely have a 25. Now, the R1 is supposed to be a race bike, and in racing, sometimes you need to change a wheel quickly, and this is where I've encountered one more problem, I'm afraid. Allow me to demonstrate. I undo the rear quick release, and my brake, just to show it's not that, and my rear wheel won't drop out. The problem is that the carbon at the dropout comes round slightly too far and it blocks the nut of your quick release skewer. So to get that wheel out, I have to undo the nut quite a bit further and then drop out. It's almost like adding lawyer's tabs to the back of your bike, which is just quite a strange thing to have done, and I think it's an accident. It might sound like I'm being incredibly negative about this bike, and I don't want to be. I really applaud innovation. I want people to transfer their skills from other industries when they can and help the bike industry do cool things. But this bike definitely does have some issues. That being said, if you can look past the handlebar and maybe the wheels, it's actually a pretty decent bike. It's quite stiff and it's also quite firm. It's very much a race bike. But if you're happy with that, I actually think it's a pretty exciting ride. It handles absolutely fine, it doesn't batter you to death, and it is genuinely rewarding when you're pushing it up a climb. To give the frame a chance to prove itself independently of the rather mediocre wheels, I actually tried the R1 with some everyday aluminium clinchers and some fat 25mm tyres, which incidentally did fit with no problem. And to be honest, it's a nice enough bike. So I guess my conclusion about the R1 is that, as is, I can't really recommend it because there are too many ifs and buts about the spec. But I do think that there is potentially quite a good bike in there, and I hope that Aerox will update the design, update the spec, and come out with something really amazing.